Hey guys, welcome to my beginner Python tutorials. I'm going to try to keep the videos between 5 and 15 minutes because I want to get straight to the point, explain what it is exactly that you can expect from the topic that I'm going over, and then just go kind of experiment on your own. I don't want to get too crazy with like underlying mechanics of how it may or may not work, just because that could be a little too in depth for just kind of getting into programming initially. And I think if you can just kind of know what things do versus why things are, it'll be much more functional as you start. When you are a little bit more experienced with it, then you can start going into the whys, and then it'll really push your understanding of the language further. This video is about for loops versus while loops. This is a pretty easy concept to get down, so it'll probably be a pretty quick video. The main thing about a for loop and a while loop is that a for loop will iterate over some object, a list for example, like the two that I have up top. And for every iteration, it is assigning itself the variable here with the element. So every time it iterates, number here or letter here will be assigned the current value, whatever it may be in that list. And underneath the for loop, you could do whatever you want with that value. So this would be used if I need to do something with the information in a list. For loop is really good because I can check everything in the list, process whatever I need to, maybe count how many things are in there. Normally you could do that a different way, but if you wanted to count like how many iterations there were, you could do stuff like that. So I will run this and let you see that both of them are just gonna go over the two lists, and it will then print out the current value that is on that iteration. Alrighty, so you could see it just print from 0 to 9. So that's what I have in here. And A, B, and C, that's what I have in the alphabet list. So you could pretty much have whatever you want, and the types don't necessarily need to be the same. And you don't really need to worry too much about types, but there's lots of things that can be stored in a list. And just know that a for loop will allow you to iterate over them. Okay, so moving on, we have the second for loop here. This is essentially the same thing, except we're using a built-in function of Python that kind of makes, it's going to essentially list out the numbers in this range. So it's kind of like, you could think about it as there's going to be a list of numbers in the range from 0 to 10, and 10 will not be included. So it's going to function pretty much identical to the number list, except I don't need to make a list of numbers to do range 0 to 10. Normally you could just do 10, but if you want it to start at 1 maybe or whatever, you could do, so you could do a beginning and end. So let me print that one out, and you could see it's going to look just like the original for loop. There you go, so 0 to 9. Both of them, like I said, are viable for doing something as you're moving over something. So a range 10, realistically, there's not a whole lot you might think that you could do with that, but it could be very important in doing something like, for the number in this range, maybe I don't want to print anything. I want a file to be created, and it's going to create 10 files and maybe make the name different by the 1 digit. Or for the amount in this range, do some command elsewhere. So it'll be much more important later down the road when you do things like threading and other stuff like that. So that's a good and important thing to know. The next two are examples of while loops. And while loops are kind of weird to loop at because like a for loop is pretty straightforward, right? You're iterating over elements in a list. You know what generally is going to be iterated over because you know what's in a list. Whereas a while loop, it just does the code underneath it infinitely. I should say while the condition is true. So if I state right here, while true, that condition will always be true. This is not able to be ever evaluate to false, so it will never stop looping. And the only way that I can break out of this loop is by doing that, just typing break. You could do it wherever you want. Like in my example here, I'm going to show you what it looks like running without the break. And then I'm going to put this condition here and say if a condition is met, then break out of it. So you could see like what it looks like both ways. But just note that I'm not necessarily iterating over anything. I'm just executing code underneath the loop indefinitely unless a condition is met or unless I tell it to break or whatever. So I'll run this code twice so you could see it just go forever, and then the next one you'll just see it break when the number reaches 99. Let me comment this out. And it's really quick. So we already hit, what, 464,000. But yeah, so that just, boop, went and did it. If I can have whatever I want in here. Remember that. Like, it doesn't have to be me just incrementing a number. I could say, connect to a server over and over again. Or open a file, see if there's new information in the file, and then close the file. And the more I put in this while loop, it's going to take longer to process, right? It doesn't really matter. It could be a really quick while loop. It could be, each iteration could be really slow. And it's very useful in tons of different things. So kind of just take this and, just try to build on it and see what do you think would like require a while loop? Why would I use a while loop, and what can, and so just mess around. Make yourself a condition that you think should be done indefinitely, and then just, program that inside of a while loop and have fun with it, So the next one is, I need to show you it breaking. Okay. So same thing, I just set a condition that said if the number is 99, break out of that loop. So the loop stopped. And one thing I forgot to mention, I have it written right here in the comment. Your code is blocked when you're in a while loop. Technically in a for loop too, but theoretically the for loop is going to end, whereas a while loop may not. So if you have code outside of the while loop, but after it, it will never come around if the while loop is not broken out of. So it's really important to make sure your while loops break eventually, or else they need to be like the last thing you're doing, or you need to do some other methods to ensure that the while loop is not preventing the rest of your code from being ran, which could be done by threading or something, but you don't need to worry about that right now. So the next example is pretty much the same thing, except instead of setting an if condition inside of the while loop, I'm setting that condition for the while loop to be ran. I actually usually do the first example because there's a lot of conditions that I might be checking for versus just the one, but there are quite a bit of cases where I use the second one. So it's going to pretty much do the same thing as the first one. I'm iterating, or I'm running the code, I'm incrementing the number, printing that number. But instead of me breaking if it equals 99, it's just saying only run while the number here is less than 100. So once it hits 99, it's not going to continue anymore. Oh, you know what? So this is a great example of, and you could tell I don't do this one that much. This is a good example of why or how this actually operates. Okay, so you could see it printed 100. Well, in programming, if I say if something's less than something, then it has to be less. There's a less than and equal to operation, which means if it was equal to 100, it would still go. But if you look at this while loop, there's something a little different, right? Because it's actually evaluating it when it starts. So I said while the number is less than 99, or sorry, less than 100. When the number hit 99, it evaluated the while loop and said it's still less than 100, run it one more time. That incremented the number to 1, or one more time, and then printed 100. So in this case, if I wanted it to stop at 99, I would have needed to say number less than 99, or do a break like this inside of there to make it prevent itself from doing that. So that's actually really interesting, and I'm glad that came up. If you like the video, please like and subscribe. It'll let me know whether I should be making more of this stuff or not. Also, in the description, I'll have some links to things like my Twitch channel where I program live, as well as do network security stuff, pen testing, things like that, my notify.me, and any information related to like the operating system I use, text editor, and all that good stuff. Take it easy.